It's finally over. Miami's long nightmare ends as they get their first win since March 3rd. We break down the game. Plus, Jimmy Butler had some interesting comments about his time with the Heat, what he thinks of Tuesday's matchup between his former and current team. Stay tuned for a great episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat. Thanks for making us your first listen every day, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. I want to get to Jimmy Butler here in a second, but before we jump in, a reminder that our next Locked On Heat watch party is at the Taurus in Coconut Grove. Come watch with us on March 29th for the Heat's game against the Philadelphia 76ers away game in Philly. Come join us for some good foods, drinks, watch the Heat, hopefully get another win
streak.
A win streak maybe going into that. Well, David, you already mentioned it, but speaking of the win streak.
It's about damn time. It's about damn time.
The Heat finally get a win. They beat the Hornets 122-105 on Sunday night. They break a 10-game skid. It's their first win in 20 days. I'm going to pop this champagne bottle, I think, because it's been a long time. I like this. You know what? I'm here. Let's do it.
Cheers, man. Cheers. It's been a long time covering this team and a struggle to try to come up with interesting storylines as they continue to stink. And I don't know that they disproved anything necessarily, but they did what they were supposed to, pulling up with a sizable lead and maintaining their intensity. When it got a little close in the fourth quarter, I thought, no, not again. But you know what? The Heat, to their credit, did exactly what they were supposed to do and continuing to beat down a bad Hornets team. So it's not exactly.
Beat the Hornets.
Yeah.
Come on.
We're here.
The unbeatable Hornets. They lost to the Hornets. They contained Miles Bridges.
Yeah.
LaMelo Ball couldn't score in an efficient way against them. They were able to score against that vaunted Hornets defense.
Nice.
Come on. They looked like a finals contender from every quarter outside the first quarter. Come on. This is huge. Look, all jokes aside, there are important things to take away from this game. But before we get to like the real basketball stuff, if you could sum up your feelings now that the Heat have gotten a win in a word or two, what would it be?
Oh, satisfied, I guess.
I like relieved. I just feel relieved.
Yeah.
Like just done, got it. 10-game skid out of the way. I guess my big question for you, and I do want to take a moment here to celebrate Andrew Wiggins, who had his best game in a Heat uniform. He was fantastic. Tyler Hero was great in this one. Bam was just doing all the things. There was a lot of good stuff, obviously, from this game. But 10 games in a row, they lost going into this one. They lost to good teams. They lost to bad teams. What changed? Why did the Heat win this one? And why were they able to do it so convincingly? Like, what changed in this one to you?
To me, a lot of it was just Andrew Wiggins having a monster game. Like, I don't know that anything else really stood out other than Wiggins just looked like the kind of scorer that we thought Miami was going to get when he was acquired by the team. He was supposed to complement Bam and Tyler and maybe even wind up leading the team in scoring and doing a pretty good job of stretching the floor, attacking the basket. And he did all those things today. You know, you mentioned all the things that Bam does that don't get nearly enough credit, but Andrew, to his credit, was getting a lot of the scoring opportunities, and he was fantastic in that role. Like, he was getting to the rim, he was dunking on people, he was shooting from the outside. He did everything he possibly could to help carry this team to a victory, and I think that was a big part of it. And look, we've talked a lot about Miami, unfortunately, falling prey to that losing mentality and continuing to just not be able to figure out how to win games as they lose games. Well, the Charlotte Hornets have been that for a long, long time. They don't know how to win games, especially with a guy like LaMelo Ball at the helm. He is just not going to be a winner anytime soon. And I don't know that he can carry those teams. And he's kind of just content to have his shot fall or not have his shot fall. It doesn't really matter. It's okay. And so I don't see them like getting blown out and then giving a maximum effort to try and find a way to win, or even as the game's getting away from them, there was really nothing that they did effectively to try and limit Miami. And they just might not be very good, which is entirely possible, but they've had some nice wins over the last few weeks as they continue to figure it out. But I don't think a lot of that has been due to Ball, and mostly due to Bridges having big games here and there. Miami, conversely, for the first time in a long time, kept the pressure on, did a great job of being able to pull away and maintain a nice lead so that it wouldn't be another fourth quarter meltdown. Although a little closer than I'd like.
Sure. And first of all, before I get to my takeaways here, I love that you and Andrew Wiggins are already on a first name basis. That's great for you guys.
Well, I guess I could call him Wiggs, I suppose.
Wiggs is what he goes by.
Yeah.
Which, Wiggs is good. Three things to me changed for the Heat in this one. Number one, during the game, they cut down on the turnovers. It was really bad in the first quarter, 5 or 6 turnovers in that first quarter, and the Hornets just got out. They got out to a lead because of those turnovers. They were scoring off of all of them, it seemed like. Miami, though, ended up with just 10 in the game, and then everything flipped. Charlotte started fumbling the ball all over the place. They ended up with 19 turnovers in this game, so almost twice as many turnovers as Miami. So when the Hornets are literally giving the game away, it's really hard to lose a game against a team that has 18 wins all season, even for a Heat team that was in the midst of a 10-game losing streak. So that's the first thing. The second thing you already mentioned, they had a player step up with an elite game. Andrew Wiggins, 42 points. That's an elite game. He's probably going to be the leading scorer of the night in the NBA unless Nikola Jokic did something crazy. Or Jamal Murray. Nope, looks like he might be. So that's pretty great. CJ McCollum had 40 in this tonight for the Pelicans. But Wiggins right now, coming up close. So that was the other thing. They just had a player play at an elite level, by far the best player on the court. And I don't really know. There's been a couple of times, like Bam against the Cavs when this all started kind of going downhill. You could argue maybe he was the best player in that game, but that was Cleveland, which might be the best team in the NBA. So it's a little bit different than playing the Hornets. So that was the other thing, and that's my third thing. They were playing the Hornets. And as bad as some of these losses are, they've only lost to the Hornets once. And it might be illegal to lose to them twice in one season. I think the whole team would have been arrested had they lost to the Hornets tonight. So
I think there's a policy in place by Adam Simon. Not Adam Simon. Adam Silver. Adam Silver. Yeah, sorry. To not lose to the Hornets twice. Just kind of keep them down. I don't know exactly what the problem might be, but it just the Hornets. They're not good. They haven't been good for a long time. When was the last time they actually sniffed the playoffs?
Well, did you hear Eric Reed and John Crotty talking about the Hornets after the game? And I was like, guys, we won one game. We can't start pointing fingers. They'd be like, wow, what a miserable way it would be to be a Hornets fan and all this stuff. I'm like, have you been watching this Heat team all month?
Yeah.
They won one game. Can we chill out on the pointing the fingers at the sad fan bases here? Look in the mirror for a second. The other question I have is whether or not the Heat can build on this. I think going into this game Tuesday against the Warriors, the Jimmy Butler return and all the emotional stuff that's going to be around that, I think this game is huge for Miami going into that game. Having confidence, even in the first quarter, everybody just felt like they were sulking. You and I were texting. I was like, this team just hates basketball right now. They're obviously not having fun. And then they figured it out and obviously won this game. But if they had gone into the game Tuesday against the Warriors sulking, just being like, now I have to deal with this guy and this whole thing and all of this stuff and all of these questions, and we've lost 11 games in a row. But now they beat the Hornets. Wiggins is playing great. The guy who was the headliner in the Jimmy Butler trade just had an awesome game. So you've got him playing at a really high level. You got the team finally winning a game. I think this is huge for morale, and this sets up pretty well for Tuesday's game against the Warriors. And the Warriors, by the way, might be without Steph Curry in that one.
Yes, they are. It's a great point. One I hadn't considered, but you're absolutely right. Like this, they needed this. Like they remember again the feeling of winning and winning convincingly. Doesn't matter. Again,
like the muscle memory part of it.
Yeah, any team can come up with a big victory. Again, the Hornets already beat this Heat team, and I don't think anybody would argue that Miami is a worse team than Charlotte. Having said that, now you kind of go in there and you've got the losing streak behind you. You know how to win again, and you can kind of focus all of your emotional energy into trying to find a way to beat Jimmy, because I think that's going to be the focal point for a lot of these players on the Miami Heat side of things. And conversely on Golden State, they want to win one for Jimmy. We've already heard Draymond Green talking about it. We know how Miami and Bam Adebayo and Tyler Hero are going to feel about trying to Again, make sure that Jimmy leaves here with a loss. Jimmy's comments is something we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. But yes, it's very important for them to have gotten this victory and to kind of get back into that right thought process of being able to say, you know what, we can beat Golden State, as opposed to saying, you know what, we're 11 games down. Who cares if we lose to Jimmy or not? We've already lost so many games in a row. It's not going to make much of a difference. They probably would have put up a much better effort, but I think now they're going to be somewhat buoyed by the fact that they got a win under their belt, and now they can continue to build on that. Who knows?
For quick standing update, one game now. The Heat are one game behind Chicago for the 9 seed in the play-in tournament. For those paying attention to that part of the standings, and not the lower part of the standings there. Also, for the record, for people paying attention to the other part of the standings, this does not materially affect their lottery odds right now. So that's that. Credit cookies. Next.
Oh, wow. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out maybe or doing some shopping online. I just made some purchases on Amazon today. And I'm like, oh, why I've spent all that money? And entertainment, oh, it always adds up. It's easy to lose track, but that's where Monarch Money comes in. They're your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building your wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you just use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and you can even make and plan long-term goals. It's that easy. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year, monarchmoney.com. We'll be right back.
Cookie guy, cookie guy, cookie guy, cookie guy. Stack them high like a cookie chain. Sharing with friends, spreading the fame. Every bite, life's never the same.
You got Fly Williams in your apartment recording a video there by any chance? Because I mean, it feels like that's a nice.
I have a lot of bottles
there.
of alcohol at my desk.
Well, I mean, it's been a 10-game losing streak.
Yeah,
I don't blame you. You probably have a lot of open bottles everywhere in your apartment at this point.
In the recycling bin.
Yeah.
We got 10 credit cookies to hand out, and reminding people, for those who may have forgotten in these last 20 days, it is the tastiest segment of Locked On Heat. It is time to hand out those credit cookies. We've got 10 of them. Who is getting the credit cookies, David, tonight?
Well, I've got one credit cookie going to Davion Mitchell. I think he was really solid tonight. Some nice on-ball defense. Wound up with 10 points as well, 12 points, as well. Really contributing as well. Trying his best to get to the rim. Like, his points felt absolutely necessary. And a night when Wiggins was doing most of the heavy lifting on offense, to get a complimentary player like Mitchell to be able to step up in that role, he's been phenomenal. Like, I know Heat fans are certainly high on him. I have been high on him. You have been high on him. I think he's certainly showing that he is a worthy candidate to continue being a part of this roster moving forward. And he's a gamer. He's just a guy who lives for these moments. Like, despite everything, you've never been able to question his effort. You could question maybe some of the other players in this roster, but Mitchell has given his all 100% since he joined his team. So he deserves at least one credit cookie.
Two things on Davion for me here. I love how he gets out in transition. It's Josh Hart-like. He's just a bull. He puts the shoulder down and he just goes through whoever's in front of him. I love what he's doing there. Second thing, I like this new Spoelstra rotation pattern that he's kind of fallen into these last couple of games, where he has Davion Mitchell and Haywood Highsmith come off the bench together when Bam goes out. So you've got Mitchell and Highsmith at the point of attack on the perimeter, funneling things towards Khalil Ware. And Ware, as impressive as he was in this game, isn't always as good defensively. So having those guys on the perimeter kind of help the rookie out. I like that as a rotation pattern for Spo.
So I've also got 3 credit cookies going to Tyler Hero with his 29-point outing, 2 of 5 from 3-point range, 11 of 19 overall, to go alongside 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals. Nice timing from Tyler on a couple of possessions there. And there were a couple shots I would have probably, and I'm sure he probably would have wanted to take back, but I think he found other ways of balancing, you know what, maybe I was a little hasty or rushed on that shot, and then attacking the basket, getting a nice floater in the lane, doing different things to get to the rim. Breakaway dunk at one point too, something we don't see very often from Hero. So a really nice overall game from him. So he gets the 3 credit cookies.
Yep.
No notes. All right.
Yeah,
and
no,
then the last...
I'm glad you highlighted the defensive activity, because he is what he is as a one-on-one defender. But when he's active off the ball and he's kind of jumping those passing lanes and being instinctual, and he had like a couple of well-timed traps that led to turnovers that he didn't get credit for necessarily. When he's like that, he's making an impact. And then obviously, he's 6 rebounds tonight in this one too. Like, he's always been a good rebounder for his position.
And you mentioned the turnovers. I mean, Charlotte, maybe a lot of those were kind of self-imposed, but I think also Tyler kind of forced the issue a little bit, because he was aggressive in attacking those passing lanes. He wasn't just content to just say, oh, they're going to make the soft entry pass. No, as soon as he read it accurately and he's got the timing and the speed to do so, he was off and running. And that's a great evolution for him. Not something I think he would have done over the first few years of his career, and something that he's continued to grow on as an off-ball defender. And then lastly, Andrew Wiggins. He gets 6 credit cookies. Phenomenal night for him. 42 points, plus 22 overall, 16 of 21, 6 of 8 from three-point range. This is as elite a scoring night. It's not the most productive night that a Heat player's had, because Tyler's had some big nights as well. Jimmy obviously had some before that. But, I mean, this was a really, really big scoring night for a player like Wiggins, and he really stepped up. And yes, again, it's the Hornets, but you can't take away a 42-point outing in the NBA. Like, it doesn't matter who the hell it's against. These are big games, and he really showed out tonight to help carry Miami to a victory. So he gets the rest of the credit cookies.
He officially joins the 6 cookie club, which is something I just made up right now, but looked up because we keep track of these credit cookies. Only 2 other players all season have gotten 6 credit cookies. Nobody's gotten more. Can you guess the 2 players?
Jimmy and Bam?
Bam and Tyler. Jimmy's high for the season was 5.
Okay, that's fair.
So
People will say
Andrew
we're
Wiggins,
haters.
Bam Adebayo, and Tyler Hero. I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it? Your 3 top players would be the 3 top cookie getters, cookie eaters. Yeah. So for the season, it was a great weekend for Wiggs too. We go by Wiggs. It was 42 points in this game, 30 points against Houston, and he has this ability to just catch fire for a quarter. He had 20 points against the Rockets in the second quarter of that game. And then he was huge in the third quarter of this game against Charlotte. He's got this ability, and it's always been there, right? Like with the Warriors and stuff. But when he's been on the court, he's been really good for Miami. And now that he's back and he's healthy and this leg contusion stuff is behind him, it looks like, you know, he plays 35 minutes in this one, where he was on a little bit of a minutes restriction against that against the Rockets. I think he played 29 minutes against them.
Yeah.
This is good. This is good for when you're talking about moving forward. Whether or not Wiggins is part of this team long term, which is a whole separate conversation, he's on the roster, he's under contract, he's a really helpful player, and he can have nights like this where he straight up wins you a game like he had in this one. So he deserves the 6.
Do you buy the 3-point shooting? I mean, like, it's been phenomenal of late. Yeah. I
don't know that he's going to shoot 75% every night.
Fair. Yeah.
But yeah, he's been a good 3-point shooter basically since he got to Golden State and kind of embraced that part of his game. Yeah, I believe it. You?
Okay. Yeah, no, I do. It's just strange that we haven't seen it. Like, it's been there, but it just hasn't been obviously as good. But it's a welcome sight to see somebody who feels comfortable in that role. Like, I think Miami has done a good job of empowering him to a degree that he has not been empowered. Like, he was always a complimentary player, and that's, I mean, to be expected in Golden State, where you have Steph Curry and Klay Thompson during his tenure there, but you also had it in Minnesota. He was playing alongside Karl Anthony Towns and Jimmy Butler and others. And so he was never really supposed to be that superstar, even as the number 1 pick overall, or at least he was never, I think, empowered to do so.
Yeah. Other
than
I
think
the
Miami's
first
done a really good
couple
job
of years in his career, but that's very different than a player who's kind of come into his own, to your point there. And he leads the team in shot attempts in this game, and rightly so, right? He had 21 shot attempts. If he's got 20 shot attempts-ish a game, and Tyler's got 20-ish shot attempts per game, and Bam, you know, it was only 10 shot attempts for him, but he didn't really need to, and he only had to play 32 minutes in this game. But even if Bam is like 15 shot attempts and those guys are closer to 18 to 20, that to me makes more sense for how this team is built and what they need from those 3 guys.
Agreed.
Let's get to the Jimmy Butler part of this. He talked about his thoughts ahead of his return to Miami on Tuesday, and his response, I think, is exactly what Heat fans expected to hear. Still, I don't think it will bring them any comfort whatsoever. We'll talk about what he said after this. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. You can support us by subscribing on YouTube, following us on your favorite podcast app. Jimmy Butler over the weekend was asked about Tuesday's game in Miami. And I think what he said won't help how he's viewed by some Heat fans who have soured on him and are sour about the way that he left the team. So a couple of things that we can get to here. The first one, when he was asked about what this game means, he gave the predictable quote that every player gives in these circumstances. Just another game for me, another game that we're expected to win for sure. So that's the quote there. Here's the one that I think has Heat fans rightfully upset over the weekend. He was sort of asked to reflect on his time in Miami and everything that he accomplished with the Heat. And he said, quote, "We were all right. We didn't win anything like we were supposed to, so I don't know. We made some cool runs. We had some fun, but that's all we did." End quote. David, is he right?
I mean, that is the most reductive analysis of the last few years. And I understand that perspective. One, he's the former player talking about this team and leading Golden State, or at least contributing to Golden State's renewed sense of energy and vitality and their internal belief that they are back to being title contenders, however unlikely or possible it might be. And yet it is kind of insulting because those runs meant a lot to fans. And he was the spearhead of those. Like he was the reason why they had those runs. He made everybody in Miami a believer because of his level of play and what he did while he was here in Miami. And I think for him to just say, "Oh, we were all right," it's kind of a slap in the face. It does not feel like it gives them. You would have liked for him to be a little bit more honest, because I think those finals runs meant a lot to him. And I know the idea, it's like, oh, it's all or nothing. You either win the title or it doesn't matter. You're one of 29 losers, and it doesn't really matter what you do before that. But I don't necessarily buy that. There was the bad luck in the Orlando bubble with Bam Adebayo and Goran Dragic getting hurt right before the finals. There was him getting hurt on the way to the NBA Finals run against Denver. They probably weren't going to beat Denver and Nikola Jokic anyway. But, it was a tough break, and they couldn't capitalize on two really golden opportunities there. But that's not to say that those opportunities weren't special. Like, to go on those runs, to have that fun was a great time in Heat history. It was a really successful time in Heat history, despite the fact that they weren't able to secure a championship. A championship is really difficult to win because so much of it isn't just whether or not you're the best team or not. It's a lot about luck and being able to stay healthy and be able to catch a team on the right opportunity or right break when they might be facing an injury or they might be going through something that you can kind of capitalize on. And so from the fans' perspective, if they're angry at Jimmy's comments, I don't have any problem with that, because I do feel similarly. I feel like for him to say that the past 6 years were all right is a bald-faced lie. Like, I don't think that's necessarily accurate, and I don't think it's fair either to what they were able to accomplish over that 6-year period.
Well said. I think Heat fans have every right to be upset with. He kind of belittled it. And he treated it as if it were nothing. And I understand that, right? I don't also expect him to be effusive about the team that he's about to play on Tuesday. That's not Jimmy Butler's deal. Fair. And I don't think anybody in his position, we see stars move all the time and give very similar type of responses to these types of questions. And they're worthwhile questions to ask. But I also understand from a fan's perspective being like, yeah, it would have been nice if you would have paid a little bit more respect to what it was, because I think this was both sides helping each other. Jimmy Butler was not a superstar before he got to Miami. CBS gave the Sixers a better grade than the Heat got because they got Josh Richardson out of the deal, as opposed to the Heat getting Jimmy Butler. He was not a superstar. To the degree that he was viewed in these last few years in Miami before he got to the Heat. They helped him, and he helped them, right? He also dragged them out of this terrible, one of the worst eras in Heat franchise history. But they helped each other do that. They helped each other accomplish quite a bit. But this is not surprising at all, because this is exactly how Jimmy Butler treats everything. Yeah. Everything is nothing, and yet everything is everything at the same time. And
good way of putting it.
He's always tried to have it both ways, right? Everything is nothing, right? Oh, this loss doesn't mean anything, and this win doesn't mean anything, and he tries to keep it even keeled during the season, and I understand that, and I respect that, and that's the way you ought to be, frankly. But this thing that was said over here doesn't mean anything. Well, Pat Riley calling you out in a press conference, that doesn't mean anything, and yet behind the scenes you're stewing over it, right? The contract doesn't mean anything. I've made enough, telling reporters at media, I've made enough money in my career, and yet you're not playing here because they wouldn't give you the contract extension.
Right.
Everything is nothing, and yet in public, but then everything is everything when it comes down to brass tacks and what his actions are. And actions speak louder than words. And for Jimmy Butler, his words have always been to belittle everything around him, and then his actions tell you exactly what it is that he cares about. At the end of the day, he cares about the money, his self, and I've never blamed him for that, right?
Right.
But the only thing I do blame him for is quitting on the team in the middle of a year, when there's a lot of people in his position that wouldn't have done that, who are still making $50 million a year. And for him to go out and say, I can't find joy on the court in Miami, as the way he did in early January, is tone deaf to most people on the planet, and also to Heat fans who found great joy in watching you and could still find great joy when you're playing the way he had just a few nights before that against Detroit, and one of the great games we've ever seen out of the regular season from him. So if Heat fans are upset with him, I don't think that these comments are going to take Jimmy Butler defenders who are more against the front office for how things planned out and just be like, well, screw Jimmy Butler. If you were already upset with Jimmy Butler for how things played out here as a Heat fan, this isn't going to help either. So I don't think this changes anybody's opinions, but it is sort of like a twisting of the dagger a little bit in the fans who felt a certain kind of way when he left.
It's unfortunate, but I'll add this, and this is just my take, having talked to Jimmy and covered him for the last few years and everything. I covered him even before he joined the Miami Heat, and just knowing who he is, I wouldn't take these words seriously. To your point, like what he says publicly doesn't necessarily hold much truth to it. It's not, it's worth the grain of salt that it's said when it's said publicly and when it's made print or whatever. Privately,
so you don't think he actually feels this way? You think he's just making it nothing because this is how he talks to reporters? Because
what's he going to say? Like he's in the middle carrying and putting his all into Golden State's title run or whatever it is that they're doing there. They're competing, and he has to put his all into that. And then publicly, that would be insulting to Golden State fans who've embraced him and looked at him as the next phase there, or the one who's going to help carry this team or bring another championship for Steph in the city, et cetera, whatever. So he can't do that. I think privately, I think Jimmy loved his time here. I said it before, and I'll say it again. I don't think Jimmy wanted to leave Miami. I think he loved it here. I think he wanted to be here for the rest of his career. And he said that a number of times, but I also think he felt that. And I think he loved his tenure in Miami. He loved those runs.
Does he feel proud of what he accomplished in Miami? Because these words make it sound like he's not even proud of it. We had fun.
Yeah.
This doesn't even feel like he was proud of it. Do you feel like he was proud of what he accomplished in Miami?
If I had to guess, I'd say yes.
Me too.
And yet, I also, there's so much pressure on him at this point to be a champion. Yep. Like, he's had big games in the playoffs. He's a gamer. He's a playoff Jimmy. And I think those things, he kind of liked those things, like to understand. It's like, on the one side of it, it's like, yeah, damn right, I step up in the playoffs. Like, that's how you're supposed to. That's where you make your name, right? And that's where you make your fame, as Clyde Frazier always says. But at the same time, it shouldn't take away from everything else that he's accomplished. But people still look at him as, well, you haven't done anything. You haven't won that championship. Right. And so he needs that one piece to put atop of his resume. And maybe
having that piece does help put that part in perspective. I want to go back to something that you said, that maybe he's saying these things but doesn't necessarily mean them. And I do think that I think you're right. I think he means it now because he's in the thick of it. He's in the thick of a playoff push. I do think that if he were to sit back and reflect on this season, because he's probably not even had a chance to do that. He got traded too, right? He had to go to So all of this stuff that happened, I do think that when he sits back and reflects on it, I don't know that he'll have regrets. Jimmy Butler does not strike me as somebody who regrets very much, but I think he will one day, whenever it is, look back and say, you know what, that it was fun, but in a little bit more of an effusive way. And I think he will look back and be very proud of what he accomplished here. But having a ring at the end of the day might help him feel a little bit better about whatever. If Miami was just a stepping stone for him, I think he'll feel really great about that stepping stone towards a championship, which if that is truly what he ultimately wants, then maybe he gets it and all that stuff happens. I don't think that's going to happen for him in Golden State. I think there's better teams in the Western Conference, but it's a different conversation, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. It's not going to happen this offseason. It's not going to happen for the next couple of years that he's in Golden State. But at the end of his career, I think the time that he was happiest was the 6 years that he was in Miami. Not the last half season and the tension between him and Pat.
The first 5 seasons.
First 5 seasons. But everything else up to that point was fantastic, enabling him in a way that he had never been enabled. In Philadelphia, he was just part of. Well, now he's going to help carry this team out of the process. But then you had Ben Simmons there, you had Joel Embiid there, he had tension with the head coach. That wasn't great. We all know how it played out in Minnesota. He was basically just getting out of Chicago at that point. He didn't really care for Minnesota so much as, well, I'm here, I'm going to win, but I want to get paid, and I don't want to be here any longer because I want my money elsewhere. That's why he was traded to Philadelphia in the first place. And then in Chicago, that was never really his team. That was Derrick Rose's team.
And then once it was supposed to be his team, once he was supposed to take the baton, the Bulls were like, we don't think that you're capable of it, which is maybe Chicago's biggest mistake over the last decade. Right, exactly.
Yeah. So it's worked out, against him for a lot of his tenure.
I think Heat fans might honestly be feeling the same way. Like, no Heat fan is sitting here and being like, yeah, I'm feeling awesome right now about how everything played out. I think if you interviewed a Heat fan, how do you feel about the last 5.5 years? Their response might be similar in emotional tenor to what Jimmy Butler just said. Yeah, it was all right. There was some real high highs there, but I'm still just I'm not over it yet. The way that everything kind of broke up at the end and the way that everything was so messy at the end. So I don't know. Like, as we talk through this, I don't know that I can blame Jimmy Butler for being that way. But at the same time, I cannot blame Heat fans that are upset with this all at the same time. One thing before we leave, there was another quote where he was asked about how it all played out, and he yada, yada, yada through it. Literally, he just said yada, yada, yada. Can we normalize that?
Best part.
I am here
yada,
for
yada,
that.
Yada, the best part. I know, that's a Seinfeld reference. Like, I can't, I don't know what he's doing there with the yada, yada. What's the full quote? Do you have it there? Oh,
yeah, I was traded from there.
Yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, I was traded from there. Yada, yada, yada. Yeah, it didn't end up the way people wanted it to. Yada, yada, yada. But that's so far behind me now, I don't even think about it. I don't pay attention to nothing except for the trajectory of this squad, end quote. So 2 separate yada, yada, yadas. It is the Seinfeld thing. We can yada, yada, yada. He did yada, 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 the best part.
Bisque,
Don't mention the bisque.
I mentioned the bisque. You yada, yada, the best part. I mean, go watch the episode if you haven't already. George Costanza dating a girlfriend that kind of conveniently yada 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 her history of shoplifting. So anyway, that was a whole other situation there. I think that's what Jimmy's doing. Like, he's glossing over the bad parts of it. He's like, yeah, I was traded. It wasn't really my choice, but
yada yada yada. I quit on the team. Yada yada yada. Like, I demanded more money. Yada yada.
Yeah.
Pat Riley said I should shut my mouth. Yada yada yada. It's all there. We did not yada 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 through the credit cookies or a Miami Heat win. Hopefully, we will not be yada yada yadaing through the rest of the season. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app.